Like the title of the video says, we are going to be covering Protea's second ability, Blaze Artillery. I'm going to preface this with this ability is very cool. I like the way it synergizes with base game mechanics. I like the way it synergizes when you mod it. It does feel very, very nice to put some mods in for this thing. And it actually can become extremely, extremely powerful. So let's go ahead and take a look at the flat card real quick, and we can talk about sort of what this ability is and how it works. So, Blaze Artillery. You deploy an artillery unit to blast plasma charges at enemies it faces. Each enemy hit increases the power of subsequent plasma attacks. So it does say plasma. This is effectively heat damage. It isn't radiation, so that might be a little confusing, but yeah, it is definitely heat. If you look down there at the damage portion, it has the fire there, and this makes it so much better as a skill with the changes to heat. This ability, this is unlisted, but it does have 100% status chance on this heat damage. That means we're going to be able to stack an absolutely crazy amount of heat damage for tough targets, and we're going to be able to stack that dot damage very, very high. Back to the card though, we're going to talk about Drain. Drain 50 energy. It is a little bit, this ability only lasts for 3 seconds. We're going to talk about that a little bit in a second. So it is a very high cost for such a short ability, but it is extremely potent, albeit limited in a couple ways, and I think this is really great design. I don't like abilities like Sarens and Volts where you just get to blow up an entire map, and if they check the box of not high enough armor or not high enough level, you just insta-give everything. I don't like those kind of abilities. I think they're bad design. They're too powerful, if you will. This ability is extremely potent, but it is self-limited, and I love that kind of automatically balancing aspect of certain abilities and frames. So, we're going to talk about damage. Actually, you know what? We're not going to talk about damage. We're going to skip damage because it's a little bit more complicated on this ability. And we're going to go to duration. Now, duration is 3 seconds. That is nothing. That is very, very low. It is very low. If you mod for full duration, you're going to have a percentage of that duration. So at max, you're going to get like 250, around 250% bonus. That's going to put you at about 7.5 seconds. Now, normally I would say that's not enough. You're not getting enough out of this skill. It's not a big enough bonus because it's a percentage based on a very small number. However, this ability is insane with duration. It's so good. We'll talk about why after we get through some of the other stuff. We have range, 30 meters. So this 30-meter range is in front of the artillery cannons. It is based on a cone. That firing arc is 130 degrees, and that is a cone. It is not just a frontal triangle. It can shoot up and down a little bit, right? So that 130 degrees is going to become very, very important for aiming, and it is based on your current camera location, not the direction that your warframe faces. Now, that's extremely common for warframe. Most abilities face where your camera's facing, not where your warframe is, but I feel like it's still worth a distinction because it does have that firing arc limitation, and some abilities are wonky in this game. They just don't work like you think they would. Range, just as a quick anecdote, we're going to talk about range just a little bit before we move on to the cooler, more interesting aspects of the ability. Range shouldn't be decreased that much. 30 meters is a very hefty range, and generally you're going to want to point this at enemies directly that you're going to want to kill. If you want to be able to shoot enemies across the map, you might even want some bonus range. However, I don't think it's super worth modding a lot of range into this. I would just try to stay out of the negative realm. So we're probably going to want to take some range mods just to stay out of the negative realm because of some choices we're going to make with mods a little bit later. But also realize that range does not increase our firing arc. It does not let us shoot higher or lower, and it also does not let us shoot more left or more right. When you point it in a direction, it is going to be shooting those enemies only. What that means is we're going to have to use multiple artilleries to cover multiple angles, and that is one of the coolest aspects of this ability, is the fact that you can have multiple of these out at a time. this does a lot of damage if you can afford the energy cost. And we kind of can, given the synergy she has with her other kit. And I absolutely love saying synergy on Warframe abilities because a lot of Warframes don't really have synergies. One final note before we get into the nitty-gritty of damage and how it's calculated and all that kind of stuff. The sheer fact that her artillery cannon is a physical visual object on her body is amazing. So when we use it, you'll notice that little thing on the bottom there, it disappears from our body, and it has a little holder, and then it pops back on when we're done. Now, interestingly, if we pop out multiple of them, we lose it. We can only lose it once, obviously, but we don't get it back until every artillery cannon has returned. So I thought that was kind of an interesting little detail that until they're all back, we don't visually see it again. I know that's probably not interesting to most, but it's just something I kind of noticed in testing. So let's jump back into the abilities, and here we're going to talk about damage. Now, this is entirely what this skill is. This skill has almost no utility. It doesn't like shield people or help people. It is a heat proc, so I guess it can make enemies like CC for a split second kind of thing. But all in all, this is a damaging skill. Now, we have 500 base damage, heat, 100% status chance. That's already pretty good. This thing shoots very quickly, and it stacks, and it has a combo duration. So this is a ranged weapon with a combo multiplier. Now that combo multiplier is 100% bonus damage per hit. You see that bonus damage down there. That doesn't seem to scale with anything. So ability strength doesn't make you do more damage per combo multiplier. Now it will make each of the shots do more damage, but it just doesn't scale that 100% down there. Now, you also might be asking, how does this work with her passive? So her passive grants you 100% power strength, otherwise known as ability strength. No idea why they did it that way. We've talked about that in the previous video. So we have 100% ability strength. This damage per hit combo multiplier is, as you hoped, a multiplier. So this thing does multiply your damage every time it stacks. Now it is not multiplicative with itself, however. So what does that mean? Let's say I have no ability strength. I have 0 ability strength in my build. Or, I'm sorry, I have 100%. I have the base amount, not 0%. You guys know what I meant. So you have 500 damage per shot. Now, that combo multiplier starts at 1x, so it works very similarly to melee. And once we get to 2x, which is literally one single shot hitting an enemy, you're going to deal 100% bonus damage. Now, that means if you did 500 damage with your first shot, you're now doing 1,000. You hit him again, you're doing 1,500. You're doing 2,000, 2,500. So it isn't multiplicative with itself, which would be something to the effect of 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, where it doubles every time. It's more like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, where it just adds the base amount again and again and again. Now, that isn't as strong as multiplicative, obviously, but it is extremely, extremely powerful. And it is multiplicative with ability strength. So what does that mean? If we do 500 base damage, instead, if we had 200% ability power, which is basically when we use it when we have her passive procced, this ability instead is going to do 1,000 damage. That means that when this combo multiplier goes up, instead of going up by 500s, it goes up by 1,000s. So we would go 1,000 damage, 2,000 damage, 3,000 damage, and you're starting to see kind of the synergy of both her kit and the combo multiplier. What this also means is that because we have a multiplier on the skill already, and because our passive is an ability strength modifier, we don't need a super ton of mods to increase our ability strength damage. Now, I would say only take some of the most efficient ability strength on her in general. This is actually true of most of her kit. So Blind Rage, I feel like, is not very good on this ability, and it's only really good for 1.5 of her skills. So I would kind of stay away from those, but things like Growing Power, where you're going to be able to basically get it for free. You're giving up corrosive projection essentially, or some utility stuff like radar, or a little bit of damage here and there, maybe more mod space, stuff like that. But yeah, dropping growing power on here and then getting something really efficient as a mod for ability strength, something like energy conversion, which again synergizes with her dispensary ability. So some of these abilities are going to be really, really powerful for buffing your blaze artillery. What that means is most of the time, if you're proccing it properly, picking up energy orbs and using a status weapon, you're going to have 75% ability strength, and then when your passive procs, you're going to have 175% ability strength. You don't really need more than that. That's absolutely plenty. You're not going to have it every shot, but trash mobs aren't going to need it. So that bonus combo multiplier stacks on top of all of that ability strength, and you end up doing absolutely insane amounts of damage. So I'm going to kind of show you a completely unmodded setup here, and I'm going to hit these corrupted bombards. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit these corrupted bombards, and we're going to see how much damage we do with one cannon. Now notice I do not have my passive working right now. My passive is not up. We have 2 more charges before it's up. So let's go ahead and let these finish. Notice they were ticking pretty hard. So this ability, completely unmodded, did about that much damage, which isn't super bad. Like against 130 corrupted bombards, not that bad. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna just put on duration. That's literally it. I'm gonna put on 2 duration mods, narrow-minded and prime continuity. Now this is gonna hurt our range a lot. So in general, what I would do, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to put on 2 range mods. I'm going to put on stretch, and I generally don't want to take up another mod slot down here. So I'm going to put on cunning drift up here. And that is actually going to net out my range back to the normal 100%. And I feel like, in my opinion, 30 meters is plenty of range. You could probably drop Cunning Drift for something else. Just know that because your base range is so good, you're losing like 5 meter range for that. But yeah, you can definitely take something else if you would like to. And it isn't going to be super necessary for this test anyway. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in here. I'm going to make some fresh ones. So now we have some fresh ones. And the only change that we have made, notice I don't have my passive ability up, is duration. Watch our combo multiplier. 19, 20, 23, 25, 20. I think we got up to 28. This is with 0 ability strength. Now, it isn't going to one-shot them. It does have to stack up that combo multiplier, but that is just an absolutely awesome feeling thing, where it's just stacking damage, and the heat proc stack up, and the armor shred stacks up, and you have a bunch of duration, and you just it just feels so very nice. Now, let's go ahead, and I'm going to throw on a couple of damage mods, and we're just going to kind of see how that feels. So energy conversion right here, we'll throw that on, and then we will throw on growing power. So we'll throw on growing power and energy conversion. So again, our strength shows up as 100%, but realistically it's probably more like 50%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate there. I'm just going to throw a random ability off into the distance so I can pick up this energy node. Notice my energy conversion is rolling, and I will have to shoot one of these bombards, so I'm going to shoot this guy off to the right just to proc my growing power. So I have growing power now, and I use my ability. So notice the increase in damage. We are at... They're basically dying before we even finish. Now, it is a little inconsistent in terms of hitting. You'll notice sometimes when it's shooting, depending on your angle, it could actually miss enemies. So I'll try to show that real quick. So see, some of these shots are coming out. They're kind of going wild. One way to mitigate that I have kind of It took me a little bit because I was like, wait, I'm missing some of my shots. Like I wasn't getting consistent heat procs. Remember, we have a vertical to this ability. It does have a cone. So if I use it from a vertical perch, it shoots at the ground and it will hit the ground. So that has AoE. All of this has AoE. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. And I think you noticed. But having the abilities hit the ground and have that radial explosion is going to be much more consistent. And you notice they did get damaged more consistently there. So now what I'd like to do is I'm effectively going to I'm going to proc these guys, and I am going to use 3 abilities. And this is going to be the full setup. This is a full artillery cannon with essentially 2 mods. Or 2 damage mods. The others are just the duration. So I'm going to hit this guy over here, and then I'm going to proc my cannon, and you're going to see that it does an absolutely enormous amount of damage. We're already killing people before we even hit 20. And these are about as tough of a thing as you can fight in the entire game. If I threw in anything made of flesh, or anything that isn't corrupted, or anything that isn't a heavy bombard or a heavy gunner or something, it is going to eat through them like paper. They're just going to be annihilated. And the duration not only makes them better at single target killers because that combo multiplier stacks up, it also makes them better at killing trash mobs because they can hold an area for longer. The final thing that I kind of want to talk about here is the firing angle. Now, the firing angle is a pointed cone. However, from what I can understand, and I absolutely hate this, is that the cone is always facing an exact coordinate in front of you or to the left of you. Basically, it is on the X, I think it'd be the XY plane or XZ plane, I'm not sure. Basically, this cone can't point up or down. So if I look up and I use my ability, theoretically, it shouldn't be able to hit them, right? It should not be able to hit them. It should be pointing up, and that cone should draw a big circle in the sky. However, it does not point exactly where you're looking. It points at the flat dimension, the 2-dimensional space, as if there wasn't a vertical, and then it draws the cone in that line. One more way we can test this is if I actually go above them, like directly up above them. Let me go here, and I'll just jump directly above them, and I'll point. Right? So I pointed. Let me point straight down at them. It still doesn't shoot them, even though I was pointed directly at them. So that is a little disappointing. I really would love the premise of being able to make a more effective area if I could increase my bullet jump, get higher, and then draw a big giant circle on the ground with that cone. There's some precedent for this in different games, and in like Dungeons and Dragons and all sorts of other things where you can turn cones into just massive orbital strikes if you can get high enough in the air. I think that would be really, really cool for this ability, but it's just not coded in that way. So I think that's going to cover it for the ability. I'm going to do a small little recap here. Damage is very powerful on this ability, but don't stack it too high because you have diminishing returns from your passive. Duration doesn't seem like it would be that good, but because of the way heat procs work now and the fact that you have a combo multiplier that increases your damage, that is going to make it extremely effective to stack duration. Range is important, but feel free to drop a little bit just because we have such good base range and the fact that our firing arc is not really affected by it. And finally, our drain is important, and we're going to want to use this ability a lot, but it's not going to be super important just from the fact that we have a dispensary that can fill us back up very efficiently. So I think that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys.